Today, we're looking at a purple ink from Kyo Iro, Soft Snow of Ohara. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. There's timestamps down below so that you can skip around, but if you got the time, I would appreciate you if you check out the entire video. You can follow me over on Instagram, and if you're new here and like fountain pen ink reviews, I would remind you to subscribe. In order to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into this Noodler's Nipponset with a music nib. I wrote with it for a day. I then used it to take the notes for the video. For the first writing sample, I always use Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. There is an additional writing sample that'll happen later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, so it came in a vial, something like this. To keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Fighting with the cat today. Got slippery hands today. Let's look at the Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and it has some decent shading going on. The word snow is lighter than the word Ohara. Kyo Iro goes from darker to lighter all the way through, so there is some shading that's going on with the stub. Now the extra fine is about the same tone that we get with the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, and some very nice shading. Brown starts dark, gets light, gets dark. Quick starts lighter on the left, darker on the right. Gets a little bit lighter in the U and then very dark at the I, C, K, but at the end of K it gets light again. So it's very nice shading going on, and only 4 seconds to dry. Now the extra fine is a little bit darker than the medium is a little bit darker than the extra fine. It has no feather spread, halo sheen, and only spots of shading. Like if you look at the F, it gets lighter into the bottom of the F and then darker into the rest of Fox. The top of the B in brown is a little bit lighter than the rest of the word, but that's about the shading that we see going on here. 6 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both aren't showing a lot of color variation because this is a darker tone when you put that much down, but we do get more in the extra fine, and it is possible with the medium. Tomoe River. No bleeding and normal Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. Extra fine is lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. 8 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, about the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. 10 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both shows no color variation. We didn't expect it, and we didn't get it. Rhodia. No bleeding and no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. Now the extra fine is a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, and it does have some shading because it's a bit lighter. Brown starts darker and gets lighter. Fox starts lighter and gets darker. Over starts lighter and gets darker. So it's very possible and very there. 5 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, about the same tone as the stub. It has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. 6 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine shows us color variation, looking far left to far right, and we got it. The medium shows none, and we got none. I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see this very nice darker blue that's pushing its way up. It comes up and then we see this line of magenta that's there. And above the line of magenta, a very, very light blue that's making its way all the way past. The one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And the only difference between the two of them that we can see here is that dark blue line across the bottom. Now it does mean that I expect that blue to be a little bit more resistant. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, my eyes are immediately drawn to the lowercase h, which make me uncomfortable to use this in a note-taking situation if you go back and highlight. Water is lifting the darkest tones, but not doing a whole lot else. Pen Flush, on the other hand, is starting to really break this ink up. I do believe, looking at how this is going, that because that's only 30 seconds of it sitting on the page and there's nothing active going on at all, I do think that Pen Flush is going to be all that's needed to get this out of your pen. If it wasn't, the 1/3 bleach solution does completely remove it from the paper. There's a slight bit of a light blue left. Again, that's only 30 seconds of a 1/3 bleach solution, and if you did have to use that, you make sure you flush your pen with water immediately after. I test ink viscosity with a tilt test that I'll link somewhere. Now, for the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Kyo Iro's Soft Snow of Ohara has a viscosity of 2.06, making this just a little bit wetter than normal. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples, and for the inks I've tested, I found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Kyo Iro's Soft Snow of Ohara has an average dry time of 7 seconds, which is incredibly fast drying. Instead of finding inks that look like Kyo Iro's Soft Snow of Ohara, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. And I wanted a nice bright green. I went with Colorverse Schrodinger. The second writing sample is done on Limon, Black and Red, and Levenger paper. Here we're looking at Limon paper, a paper that has had very mixed response to fountain pen ink. I don't consider it a fountain pen friendly paper, but I do like finding inks that perform well on it, and this is not one. We have a lot of bleed spots that are going through, although it doesn't touch the page underneath. With the medium, it does stop you from using the back of the page. With the extra fine, it might not. The stub, it does. The 1.1 has a ton of feathering. The entire thing is feathered, tiny feathers all over all of the writing. It has some spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub. The extra fine has no feather spread. Sorry, it has some spread because it goes to about a medium. No halo, sheen, no shade, 3 seconds to dry. The medium is as dark as the stub. It has a ton of feathering all over it. Just look at the K in quick, the Q in quick, the J in jumps, the BRO in brown, the he in the, lots of feathering, tiny all over, but might not stop you from using this. It would stop me. It has no spread, oddly here. No halo, sheen, no shade, 4 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both shows no color variation, and we didn't get any. Black and Red notebook. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and it does offer some decent shading spots. Like in the Iro, it starts a little bit lighter and gets a little bit darker. There's subtle shading that's going on. The Ohara is certainly darker than the word snow. Extra fine is slightly lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, and some very, very nice shading. Quick starts lighter and works its way to very dark. Fox is a nice uniform tone across, except that one downstroke in the F is a bit darker. So it's definitely able to be there, even on this paper that's quite a bit more absorbent. 2 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine, with no feather spread, halo sheen, and the shade is even better here. Quick is light at the top of the Q, so it's light, and as the downstroke dark, the upstrokes light, downstrokes dark, upstrokes light, and then it's very dark all the way across. Fox starts light and gets dark. Jumps starts light and gets dark. So there's a lot of starts light and gets dark. It's nice. 2 seconds to dry. Still, it's a very absorbent paper. Now the Scrubby for both shows no color variation, although we do get plenty of color variation in the writing. Last up is Levenger. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, and some very nice shading going on. Jumps starts lighter and gets darker. Over starts lighter and gets darker. Lazy starts dark and gets light right in the loop of the Y. It's possible there. We're just not getting a ton of it. 3 seconds to dry. Medium is about the same tone as the extra fine with no feather, spread, halo sheen, better shading than the extra fine. In quick, it's lighter at the top, darker at the bottom, dark across, light at the top. Brown, it's a very dark beginning, and it gets slightly lighter at the end of the W into the N. Over starts slightly lighter and gets darker. It's there, it's possible, it's doable, it's just not a ton of it. 3 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both far left to far right shows some color variation, and we do get some color variation in the writing, and that is all that I have for the writing samples. So what do I think of Kyo Iro's Soft Snow of Ohara? I think this is a very interesting ink. It gives some decent shading, and there's something about the color that really makes you enjoy writing with it. Now, it tends to remind you of other inks, but frequently then you can't put your finger on it. So it's very reminiscent of a lot of inks while being completely its own. So what nib and flow give the best writing experience with this ink? I found a wet fine put down the nicest tone that you could have, although you sacrifice the shading when you use a very wet pen. So you have to choose between some of the shading with a medium to dry pen or the great color from a wet pen. If you've made it this far, and according to my analytics, 50% of you aren't, and you enjoyed it, give me a thumbs up. If you are not subscribed, I would invite you to subscribe, and thanks for watching.